Does Ferrari rise again in Hungary? Carlos Sainz is the fastest at the end of the first free practice session in Budapest on a slow and hot track. The Spaniard on soft Pirelli tires clocked an excellent 1 minute and 18.713 seconds, while the air temperature was 31 degrees and the asphalt a scorching 60. The Ferrari driver with the SF-24 equipped with the latest aerodynamic package, including a diffuser update, immediately felt comfortable, giving the impression that the red car seems to have found its way again. Charles Leclerc finished the first free practice session in third place, 298 thousandths behind his Maranello teammate. The Monegasque driver encountered traffic on his flying lap and then went off track at turn 12 when he tried again with the same set. Nothing serious, because the most interesting data emerging from the opening session in Hungary is that Ferrari also seems to offer a good pace in the long run. Fans of the Prancing Horse should not get their hopes up because the red car was set up well at the start, but we know that it performs well on a green track. For now, the Maranello team has started the weekend in the best way, boosting the drivers' morale after the disappointing recent races. Between the two Ferrari cars, there is Max Verstappen with the revamped Red Bull. The Dutchman worked only with soft tires trying to gather data. The Milton Keynes team brought a deeply revised RB20. The world champion set his time when the track was still green, and the gap of 276 thousandths is not indicative, as the three-time world champion was focused on comparative tests to finalize the new front wing design compared to the old one. The Austrian side did not do a long run, preferring to gather information on the new aerodynamic package that changed the hot air outlets, abandoning the bazooka. Sergio Perez with the more traditional RB20, but with the same new floor as Max Verstappen, finished 11th, half a second behind Red Bull's lead driver. It's true that the Mexican is under scrutiny, but it's fair to say that Checo started the session doing aerodynamic tests with a large rake of sensors and then focused on various setup changes. Red Bull, therefore, used the first hour to compare data from the two configurations, and on more than one occasion, the two drivers ran at a constant speed to obtain comparable information. Mercedes confirms the positive moment. George Russell put the W15 in fourth place, but the Englishman, like Lewis Hamilton, only ran on medium tires, so the gap of 4/10 from Carlos Sainz is not particularly significant. The seven-time Formula One world champion is only 10th, struggling with a more difficult and front-wheel locking black-silver aero. The surprise of the session is Guan Yu Zhou with the standard version Sauber, while Valtteri Bottas debuted a very evolved C46. The Chinese driver is fifth ahead of the two McLarens, while the Finn is only 15th. Valtteri is seeking setup before looking for performance. Lando Norris is sixth, 38 thousandths ahead of teammate Oscar Piastri. The two MCL 38 cars focused more on race preparation than on a single lap. Smiles in the Racing Bulls camp. Yuki Tsunoda put the Faenza car in 8th place, giving the impression that development has been found after a few difficult races where the latest updates didn't work. Daniel Ricciardo, however, is only 12th and more detached. Lance Stroll with the revised and corrected Aston Martin is 9th. The Canadian did not give flattering reviews of the new package, but time must be given to the technicians to work. In trouble once again is Fernando Alonso, only 13th. The Spaniard seems to have lost motivation, not seeing a change in trend. Alexander Albon with the Williams is 14th. The Anglo-Thai driver damaged a floor in an off-track excursion, and despite this, he was faster than Logan Sargent, 15th. The Alpine is struggling with Pierre Gasly ahead of Esteban Ocon, already on his way out. Closing the list in the first free practice session is Haas with Kevin Magnussen, slightly ahead of Ferrari Jr. Oliver Bearman, who continues his apprenticeship towards promotion to a full-time driver in the American team. The Englishman took the car left free by Nico Hülkenberg. Ferrari arrived in Hungary to conduct important aerodynamic tests for the 13th round of the 2024 Formula One Championship. The objective is very simple: to meticulously gather a plethora of on-track data and then compare it with the simulator results. To do this in the best possible way, the Prancing Horse technicians have installed large amounts of rakes around the front part of the car with the aim of studying the fluid mass affecting the sidepods and the entrance of the floor. The Maranello team's technicians will be able to analyze if the real pressure field corresponds to the one calculated in the Computational Fluid Dynamics. The new floor brought by Ferrari to the Hungaroring seems to have partially resolved the issues encountered in recent races. Besides the lap times, telemetry confirms this, so let's analyze it together. Looking at Carlos Sainz's best lap time in the first free practice session and comparing it with Max Verstappen's best lap time, it's as encouraging to see that the Ferrari SF-24 car flies on a single lap, especially on a track where overtaking is far from easy. The aerodynamic update package brought by Ferrari at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona for the Spanish Grand Prix worsened the car's behavior in fast corners, but the corrective updates in Budapest achieved some of the desired result. Comparing Carlos Sainz's performance to Max Verstappen's in qualifying simulation, the SF-24 is noticeably more competitive in fast corners, especially compared to what could be seen in the previous races. The biggest problem of the previous updates was the bouncing triggered in sections over 200 km per hour. In Hungary, this phenomenon was not observed, and the car performed as expected. The good news doesn't stop there. Besides being fast on a single lap, Ferrari is also very competitive in race simulation. We just need to look at the comparison between Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, and George Russell on a lap down to the thousandth in order to highlight the following. The SF-24 is excellent at low speeds, both in cornering and traction, and now, unlike in previous weekends, it defends itself well in fast corners. But just to be clear, the corrected version of the new Ferrari is not the best car at high speeds. Still, overall, it is a different car compared to recent outings. In short, thanks to the corrective updates brought to Budapest, Ferrari seems capable of fighting for a significant result, although it is still early to say. We will see if the rest of the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend confirms what could be a real turnaround, even with a World Championship perspective. Charles Leclerc was not entirely satisfied with the car, so he requested and got a change in the front end load, plus 2 clicks, to have more downforce and balance the load compared to the rear, in the final stages of the first practice session. Looking at the times, only in the first corner, the Monegasque is a 10.5 behind the Spaniard. Main lost in turns 1, 12, and 14 for him. Brian Bozzi, the Formula One engineer managing track communications, suggested using more engine braking at turn 1 to try to reduce the gap. Charles Leclerc listened, but didn't seem too convinced that the measure will be effective. A side note before focusing on the short but still factual high fuel tests, which we will also do in the next video. The excess rotation in fast corners continues to be present, but on the other hand, the car's setup is only good, not optimal. Proof of this is the several adjustments made to the front end. Moving on to the brief but intense high fuel test, it should be noted that there is a diversification of tires, soft for Carlos, hard for Charles. During the laps, we noticed a composed and fairly predictable car, a good sign because the chosen setup seems to be a good base. Foundations on which the perfect setup will need to be built ahead of the qualifying session on Saturday. To give an initial reference with a lot of fuel on board, without taking the times too seriously, it must be said that the handling remains good. The clean driving is evident, unlike in recent free practice sessions where the Ferraris were often unsettled. The expected numerical feedback seems to be present. The conditional tense is obligatory in these cases. It's better to be cautious and wait for the second free practice session, where we will undoubtedly understand more. For now, the first one went well, as they say.